Hey, and welcome to this training video. In this video, we're working on Data Structures 2021, SPAC 6, and we're going to work with bolting and bolting groups. Now, you have different ways of actually using the bolting function, and I'm going to show you now the different ways and different functions of bolting itself. So first thing that we're going to do, I'm just going to add my snaps here, and we're going to place in a beam, and from this point to this point also a beam. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to show you, let's put another beam in over here. Now, I'm going to show you the different ways of how bolting works and how you can manipulate the boltings to your specifications and requirements. So the first thing is we're going to work with the end plate. Now, just to show you quickly, if you use the end plate function for the following method, you can see that the bolts fall in place with each other. However, what will happen is when you run your reports, it will pick up two sets of these bolts. So it won't just give you 6 bolts, it will give you a total of 12 bolts, each with too short basically to be used. So what you can do in this case, if you didn't use the proper connection method, you wanted to use this method, you can either just explode and delete this part and choose your bolt saying bolt part, and you start by the plate and you end by the other plate. Make sure you do choose it to go through your main part. So now it will give the correct amount and the correct size. The correct method to actually use your bolt connection, in this case, would be to use a two-sided end plate that will automatically place the bolt in correctly. Now, we've worked with the different types of bolts and how you can manipulate it and what you can do with the bolts used. So I'm just going to go ahead and place it in here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my own bolts. Now, you can either use the function on an end plate to get bolts, or if you want to place it in manually, you can choose your bolt macro. And here you can choose your different size bolts with the standard grade, 8.8, 4.8, the punch-sunk type, etc. Bolt type should be site or workshop. Now the difference is I'm going to show you in the color, and also it will help them know when to use. So what I mean by that is, let me place in a bolt just quickly over here. So you can see that the color now is different. So I'm just going to quickly, that's not much really, but okay, top, and we're going to move it. So what this actually now means is that this bolt now here in your joints, but what happens is you place another part on it. So I'm going to show you now. If I place a let's choose plate like this, there we go. We move this bolt into position and we say bolt part for both these items. Now what happens now is you'll see that it's currently too far. This is what happens. It's the error that shows up. So what you have to do is you have to increase your cut length. So I'm going to make it 250 to give it this item. So what this does is you can see that here's the bolts now. I'm going to show you what a side bolt and a normal bolt actually does. So if I open my docket manager and I create a drawings, there we go, and we say create from all. Right, so there we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this beam. I'm going to say by parts to get the main part of it. So here's the main assembly, as you can see. So if I double click on it, there we go. So now you can see that it actually inserts the plate, because this means that they have to bolt this item in the workshop and send it as is to site. So this is how you can say, or how you can use your Tekla structures to actually indicate whether it is a normal or a site bolt. I'm going to go with a site bolt now, and I'm going to modify it. Now, once you've done this and you perform again, sorry about that, you go to your docket manager, what will happen is it will now have cloned this item. The reason is because if I update this part right now, and we open it, it will be just the plate or just the beam, depending on which part was the part of your main assembly. And your beam is the drawing that was cloned, which is now called A2, which will be your beam, the hole in it. So this is what it actually does. It actually creates it, instead of using add to assembly or anything like that, you can use this to say this should be a site or a workshop bolt. Right, so this is the one way of doing the bolting. I just want to show you that you can actually use it in this method. Now we're going to go back to our steel, and now we're going to create a bolt function. Now, or rather, before we go on, this currently, if we explode this item, this is placed as a group of bolts, as you can see. So if I delete it, it deletes all the bolts. So this is called a group of bolts on Tekla. Now you can now manipulate it and change it as you see fit. You can actually change it. Now I'm going to show you where you can change item. If you turn this off, what it does is it takes out the entire bolt and leaves you with just holes. You can see there's the holes. If I press Ctrl 2, it will go to wireframe and it shows you that it's just holes. So if I want to place it back, I can just choose that function and it's placed back. Now currently it has a washer. If I want to have a washer at the head part, I can add it in. So this is double washer. You can even add another washer on the other side if you wish to do so. Doesn't really matter. This is up to you on how you want to detail your item. You can add an extra nut even if you wish to. Now you've manipulated the bolts in regards to your, whether you want hole, you want bolts, what exactly do you want to use. Now I'm going to come back to this part right here, on this right here. For now, I'm going to focus on these two values. Now what this does is the y-axis is basically your cross centers between your bolts. So your x-axis is determined from node to node. So your x will be from node to node, and your y would be cross centers between these two nodes. So if I change this to 100, for instance, it will remove these two bolts, as you can see. And if I go back to 2 times 100, it will add it. If I change this to 70, you'll notice that the bolts will move in closer to each other. So I'm just going to turn it over here. As you can see, it moved in closer to each other. So this is how you're going to manipulate your bolt grouping. The tolerance of the hole, what this does is, if I press Ctrl 2 for wireframe once more, and I change the 2 to a 5, for instance, you'll notice that this areas, these orange circles, will be the hole size, and this will now increase the total size, as you can see. So this is the manipulating through that item. So now you get your different types here. Now you have a special hole if you wish to use it. This is all up to you. So what the special hole is, if I turn off all of this, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to choose bolt parts just to show you. If I choose the plate, beam, and plate, what this does is this will be item 1, item 2, and the plate on the other side will be item number 3. So I'm going to choose a bolt again. So what this means is if I choose this item and this item, it means that it will go through a special function. Will go through the plate and the plate. So let's say I want a slot. I want it to be slotted plate. So what I do now is I choose my slotted. I can choose slotted, oversized, or no hole. I'm going to choose slotted for now. I'm going to say in the X I want it 25. As soon as I press enter, you'll notice that now your hole is a slotted one through the 2 plates. If I change it from these 2 items to beam, or I can choose all 3 items if I so wish to, as you can see. So the first item you choose with your bolt part, second, third, fourth, and fifth. I'm going to just change it back to just the 1 plate, and you can even change this so that it's in the y-axis, as you can see currently. Now this is where it gets interesting. You can now change it to make a square hole. So if I change this to 25, it becomes a sort of a square, oversized hole. But this is not correct. So I'm going to choose oversized, and I'm going to say I want it oversized by 25. As you can see, it's now oversized. This doesn't really differ. Now the reason we use this function is if you want the hole to be through the 2 plates to be big and oversized, and not through your beam, use this function. As you can see, as soon as I turn these off, I can just easily just say this is 30 oversized, and there we go. Then it goes through all three items, and with no exception. As soon as you choose your special, it will just go through the plate or the item that you choose it to be special of. Now, I'm going to go back to my slotted function, and we're going to remove the y-axis. Now, what happens is, if let's say you wish to have a slot that is in this direction for the plate and in the opposite, in the y direction for the beam, you can choose this to be parallel item. Once I choose parallel, you'll notice that it will stay in the same direction. Once I choose it as an odd, it will now differ in direction. And if I choose for the plate in the back, it will be the same for the two plates. If I unselect the beam, it will still remain this way because it is set up through the beam as well. So that's why it will be like this. If you go with the even part, it will now change the direction, and the beam will be in the x and the plate will be in the y axis. But if I choose parallel, it will be the same straight through. I'm going to turn off all of this. Right, so there we go. This is just a quick way of how you can edit your bolts in the item, the bolting group. Now, currently we are looking at these items. What this does is you'll see that currently your x, the spot starting point, and it's leveled your beam. So if I want to move the beams, let's say 25 down, I can choose 25 and it will now go this way downwards because it goes from my x direction. If I say 0, it will stay at 0. So this is just an offset of your items. So you can use this to manipulate your bolting spacing and it goes sloped or not. And another thing that you need to take into consideration is the rotation. And if you say front, you'll notice that it will rotate at 90 degrees. And if I say back, again, it's the same, but it was at top. So if I choose below, what's the difference is from top to below, the nut is shown now, and here it will be the head of the bolt. And this is how you can manipulate it as well. Now, again, if you choose this to be 25, it will rotate. So I'm going to change it back to 0. And of course, with this part, what it does is actually offset in this direction. You just can't see it right now, so it doesn't matter. In the depth, what it will do is it will now move, so let's say 25, and will move the x direction, where the plane will go to your y direction. So this offsets it to go to certain sides. So this is just a quick idea of how your bolt grouping function or your bolt macro works. So if you choose your bolt macro, it's the exact same item. Now, let's say you wish to actually move the middle bolt on this side to place a stiffener or whatever you want to use. What you can do is you can either choose it within, I'm going to delete everything right now, and what you can do, you can either choose it within your component. If I choose my component, usually it gives you the function at your bolting. Let's go with, let's see if the bolting, right, yes, here we go. So the delete part will be, you have to say which bolt you wish to delete. So I'm going to choose number 3. As soon as I say modify, it removes that bolt, as you can see, because it will count probably 1, 2, 3. So if I choose rather 2, it should be this bolt right here. 1 is on this side right here. So 4 would mean it will delete this item right here. So you can either do it on your component itself, or another method of doing this would be to explode your item doing the following. Now this way, again, you can get away with a few things right now. If you choose on it, it will choose it as a bolting group. But let's say I want to remove this bolt. Now I have to go down here to say select a single bolt, and then I can choose a single bolt within bolt group, and I can delete it, and there we go. Now let's say you want to move this one 10 down, this one 10 up. You can easily do that as well. You can choose this bolt, choose a point to point, say 10 millimeters up, and you can choose this one as 10 millimeters down because you want it maybe staggered or whatever. So this is how you can manipulate your bolting in spaces. So this is how you can choose a single bolt within your group of bolts. Right, so there we go. So there we have a quick idea of what bolting can do. Now, I'm going to come back. I'm going to go back to one thing that we haven't discussed of your bolting, and it is this tab right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my bolt function. I'm going to delete these and make it 0. Sorry about that. And I'm going to create a view because this will probably need a view for. I'm going to say new view using 2 points. I'm going to choose this point to this point. And here we go. So I'm going to go back to my bolt. If I choose my bolt, now I'm going to place a bolt right on this item right here. So let's start off by just bringing it down by 100. What will happen is if I choose 100 in this part, it will move 100 millimeters up. So from my starting of my node to the bolt center is 100, as you can see. Now, let's make this a bit more. I'm going to make it 200. Get it nice and close enough to the middle. It's not quite in the middle, but close enough. The reason is, I'm going to show you now what this item does right here. So, as discussed, if I place 50, it will be a bolt down in a 50. If I choose 50 over here, it will be bolts. But it will now move 25, 25, as you can see. So, this is how the array works. You can choose circle. And the number of bolts you can say, for instance, 8. And what do you want the diameter of your item? So for instance, if I say 200, you'll notice that from this point to this point is 200. So now you can create a perfect circle, and this is used at piping, at the flanges, or even if you have a pipe column and you have a round base plate with round bolting. So this is where you can use the circle function. Now, of course, if you go back to your array, what will happen is it will be again the same function. I'm going to go with 100 by 100. But let's say we go with 2 times 100 and just 100. And we move this up by 100 millimeters. There we go. So now we have the normal one. So as soon as we choose list, what this does is you can now literally have to choose list. So list should be stated as 100, for instance, 50. Now what it does is it has a bolt of 100 and 250. Now your list you can't do manually. I'm going to show you why. The list is done as follows. When you modify a group with your single bolt selection, it changes it to a list. So what it does is you have to type in the correct coordinate. So it's now currently at 2 at 0, then a 90, then 110, and then 2 at 200. So you have 2 is, let's see, these items go, and this item goes 200. So basically it tells you that from this point to this point is 200, and from this point to this point is 200. However, from the top, the first bolt to the first bolt should be 0. There's 2 of them, you can see. And then from this point to this point is 90, and from this point to this point is 110, and then 2 items from that point. So let's try and see if we can create a list. So I'm going to choose this point, place it right over here. Now we can start. The first part should be 2 by 0. The 2 first bolts should be at 0. And we're going to change this as 90. So the next bolt I want at, let's say, 85. And the next bolt at 110. And the final bolt at 200. So I'm going to say 2 by 200. And if I choose select for this, okay, so what it does, it changes automatically to array. So that cannot work as you see. So the only way to really use the list is to use it when you manipulate in a group. So this is the bolting, how you can change your bolting to your specifications and how you can manipulate bolt groups. And now I'm going to show you the bolt part function properly. So I'm going to go back to my 3D view and I'm going to show it to you. So we have bolts going straight through. So if I choose bolt part from through this part and this part. What it does is it only creates holes through two plates. Now you can see there's a line or small part right there. That's the bolt itself. It's not the hole. There's the hole in there. This is the bolt neck. So as soon as I say, for instance, perform my numbering, and I create my docket manager, I can choose, oh, sorry about that. I choose this item right here and I say, let's just unfilter and say again, by parts. Now, if I update, currently there should be 0 holes within my beam. As you can see, there's dimensions, but no holes. So if I close this and I redo my bolt parts, so this is where you should be very careful when you do your bolting. If I choose my bolt part to go through the plate, through the beam, and through this plate, and I perform numbering once more, and I open my docket manager, it will now say that the item was edited, those parts modified. So now you can see the holes in this part right here. I'm just going to say no. So this is how you can manipulate and how your bolt parts work in common sense. Now again, remember, if you use bolt parts and it does the following, I'm just going to show you if I say 10. If it shows you an error like this, but you know for a fact you choose your bolt part to go through all 3 items, and it still does this, go to your cut length and just increase it, and it will then work out perfectly. So what it does is it actually picks up from your node 75 in this case, and it will work because the web is about 6 millimeters thick or a bit more, and the plates are 10 millimeter thick. So in total you have, let's say, 16 millimeters to this side, and you have a cut length of 75 in this direction. So let me show you what happens. Let's change the bolt. You can change this plate to say from up to down. It moves away. So currently the bolt still works, as you can see. But now if I increase the thickness to 70, all of a sudden it no longer works, as you can see. But if I increase it to 200, it will work, because it's still more than the plate was originally. But this is how you can manipulate and how your bolt functions work. So this is about it about the bolting, and just remember to use your bolt parts correctly and how to use your bolt